This is Charles.
All right, let's see. I think we have everyone back. Are we ready to go with the next plaintiff's witness?
We are, Your Honor. This is Tracy Sticko for the plaintiffs.
Okay. Who would you like to call?
Kristen Thompson, I believe she's in the waiting room.
I think we're going to go, actually, Ms. Sticko, I believe we're going to go with Amy Nell, our second witness.
Okay. Amy Nell.
Yes, and I believe Mr. Wisenhunt, also counsel for the plaintiffs, is also in the waiting room as well.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second.
He got booted.
Well, let's see if I can fix that. Breakout room. All right, now I figured it out once. I will get it done. Oh, here we go. Mr. Wisenhunt, admit, and we admit Ms. Nell.
Yes, Your Honor, she's our next witness.
So Mr. Wisenhunt, he's here, and Ms. Nell is connecting. Ms. Nell, can you hear me? Oh,
I can.
there
I
you are.
can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. If you'll raise your right hand, I'll place you under oath. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. All right, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Attorney Aaron Woolhams for the plaintiff. I'm going to be questioning Ms. Nell, if it may please the court.
Okay. I'm
Ms.
ready.
Nell, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Nell, can you please state your name for the record?
Amy Nell. The last name is N-E-L-L.
In which city do you live in Florida?
I live in Tampa.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an attorney,
What type of law do you do?
criminal defense.
Do you have any school-age children?
I do.
What are their names and ages?
Owen is 10 years old and Bridget is 7.
Are your children eligible to be vaccinated?
They are not. They're under 12.
And where does Owen attend school and what grade is he in?
He attends Mabry Elementary, which is our zoned public school, and he's in 5th grade.
Is it a good school?
It's a great school.
And with regards to Bridget, this year, what school does she attend and what grade is she in?
She's in 2nd grade and she is attending a private Montessori school.
Now, last year, where did your children attend school?
They both attended Mabry.
And were they in person? Were they remote? How did they learn last year?
They started remote. We were hesitant to send them back in person. And so we started them doing e-learning and they went back to in person right after Thanksgiving.
And why did they go back to in person just after Thanksgiving?
E-learning was tough for both of them for totally different reasons. Owen is very focused and driven, but he was really missing out on the social component of school. And Bridget, any e-school for a 6-year-old is going to be challenging. So it was hard for her to sit still. We learned last year that she has dyslexia, so she wasn't getting the one-on-one instruction that she needed.
And Your Honor, just briefly, it appears that Mr. Wisenhunt has been kicked out of the Zoom again, and I believe he is in the waiting room.
Yet again.
He's our trouble child for the day.
Yes. Mr. Wisenhunt, you're back.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Certainly.
Going back briefly to that, when they returned to school, was there any sort of, did they go back in person to Mabry?
Yes.
And when they went back, were there any sort of mandates regarding masks? Were there any sort of requirement about masking or social distancing?
Yes, at the time they went back last year, they were required to wear masks, and they did. And they also had more children still out e-learning. So I believe they were able to leave one seat in between each child in the cafeteria.
Okay. And when they came back to school and they were wearing masks, did you notice any sort of impediment to their learning? Did their grades fall? Did they have any sort of communication issues?
No,
Objection,
No,
Your
not at
Honor, was slightly leading.
Sustain.
Let me ask you that question again. What, if anything, did you notice about your children's learning when they went back to school and had to wear masks?
they excelled. I mean, the homeschooling was really tough for them. They went back to school. They loved it. I never heard a complaint from them again about getting up and going to school in the morning, because I said, well, the other option is staying home with mom and doing Zoom school. And they were not interested in that anymore. So they went back to school and they did great.
Did you notice any impact on their communication or verbal skills?
None.
And you said homeschooling. Were you doing a homeschooling curriculum or were you doing a curriculum from somewhere else?
Sorry, I misspoke. It was the e-learning platform that our public school was offering. But because it was school at home, sometimes I interchange the words. It wasn't a formal homeschool program. It was just our district e-learning program.
Let's talk about this year. With regards to Owen, where is he? He's still attending Maybury?
He is.
Okay. And I'm going to talk to you about prior to August 18th. Prior to August 18th, at the start of school, was there any sort of mask mandate or precautions to your knowledge that were being taken at Maybury?
They were recommending masks, but I believe it was like the day or two before school started on August 10th that they came out with the option to opt out for parents. So we were emailed a form from the school district that just asked if you wanted to opt out.
Were there any sort of requirements for an opt-out?
No.
What size is Maybury? How big is it?
I believe there are currently about 830 kids. I believe that's on their website. But that could be from last year, but it's, around that size.
Okay. How does the capacity, to your knowledge, differ this year from last year?
I know that on their homepage or in their About Us section, it says that they can accommodate 700 and something students. I forget the exact number. It might be 780. And I know that last year's numbers are above 800.
And what about this year's?
I can't say, but I do know that more kids have come back to brick and mortar because e-learning is not an option through our district.
To your knowledge, at Maybury, can any of the children be vaccinated?
No, they cannot.
Why?
Because I can't speak to every single child, but generally children in 5th grade are 10 or 11 years old. So they don't qualify because they aren't 12.
And what grades does Maybury cover?
Kindergarten through 5th.
Prior to last week, have you been present on campus this school year?
Yes, I went to the open house, meet the teacher.
Okay. When was the open house?
I believe it was a couple of days before the start of school, so maybe August 8th.
And what was that like?
I believe I saw maybe 50% of people wearing masks. We met my child's teacher in her classroom, and she was not wearing a mask when we met with her, but we were wearing ours, and she did put hers on once we were chit-chatting and talking about the year.
What was the configuration of the desks in your child's classroom during the open house?
They were set up in pods of four desks pushed together.
Was there any spacing between those desks?
Not between the desks and the pods, but in between the pods, there was some space. This
school year, have you gone to your child's campus itself? Have you gone to Maybury Elementary during the school year?
I have.
Okay, why?
We live about a block from his school, and my husband and I both work from home. So I've been taking my lunch break every day to bike or walk over to the school at my son's lunchtime, and I sign him out. They send him up to the office. I sign him out. We eat outside, and then I sign him back in, and he goes back to class.
Why do you go to your child's school for lunch?
Because I feel like the amount of children they have in the cafeteria without masks for 30 minutes at a time is not a very safe situation as far as COVID transmissibility.
Prior to last week, when you would go to the office to sign your child out, how many people would you say were wearing masks each day you would go? Staff members?
Probably about 80% in the front office. There were a few that weren't, but most were.
And do you get notified when there are positive COVID cases from children or staff at Maybury?
We do. We receive a text message from the school.
And how often do you receive those, or have you received those this school year?
We only receive them on days when there is a positive case. They did the same thing last year, so we're used to the process. But this year, we've gotten a text message every day, including weekends, since August 10th.
Now, did anything significant happen last week in Hillsborough County with regards to masks or mask mandates?
It did, and I would like to go back. It's not, just to clarify, the text messages we get, it's not just we get a text for each kid that tests positive. It's the total number per day that have reported positive tests. So far it's been 34 cases just at our elementary school.
And what day did school start?
August 10th.
Okay. And then taking you to August 18th, what happened with regards to masks in Hillsborough County, to your knowledge?
Our school board decided to implement a 30-day mask mandate with opt-out only for medical purposes.
Have you gone to lunch at Maybury since the mask mandate was put into effect?
I have.
Have you noticed anything different with regards to the masks?
I have. All the office staff are now wearing masks, and the kids that I see in the halls. I'm not physically in the hallways, but the way it's configured, I can see the kids walking, and they are wearing masks.
Does Maybury require uniforms?
They do.
Is there an opt-out provision for the uniforms that they require?
Only for religious purposes, I believe.
Now let's talk about Bridget this year. She switched schools. Is there a big reason or a reason why she switched schools?
She needs more one-on-one help with reading since she's been diagnosed with dyslexia. So we felt that having her in a private school where they would allow her specialized reading tutor to come into the school and do her tutoring would be more beneficial for her, because that's the time of the day that she's ready to learn, instead of going after school when she's tired and doesn't want to do any more learning. So they allow somebody to come in and tutor her, and that wouldn't have been an option for us at Maybury.
Does this school, does it have a mask mandate or any requirements?
It does. It does.
And
I believe they have, the kids are all required to wear masks. I believe there are some considerations made for the very lowest age group, because at a Montessori school, the classes are of mixed age. So the primary kids are 3 to 5. So they're little. So there are some exceptions made there, but for Bridget's grade, which is first grade, second grade, third grade, and all the way up to 8th grade, are required to wear masks.
Do your children wear masks outside of the home?
Yes.
How long have they been doing that?
Since last year, April last year, when we started venturing out of the house again after the initial lockdown. You know, we all started wearing masks.
Have they developed any sort of health issues as a result of wearing masks?
None.
Have they developed any sort of mental health issues as a result of wearing the masks?
Nope.
Have they developed any sort of developmental delays as a result of wearing the masks?
None.
With regards to going back to Bridget, particularly, did her wearing masks last year have any sort of negative effect on her education?
It didn't. And in fact, her tutor that we did work with after schools, both the tutor and Bridget wore masks very religiously because the tutor's husband was a type 1 diabetic. So she knew he was at increased risk should he contract COVID. So she was very careful about wearing masks. And we still saw Bridget in the 4 months that she worked with her bring herself up to grade level as far as reading goes.
How far high did she bring herself up in reading levels?
She went from probably like early kindergarten reading level to average first grade reading level in 4 months.
Do you know what a hijab is?
I do.
Okay, and what is it?
It's a religious head covering that Muslim people of the Muslim religion wear.
Do you know anyone that wears a hijab?
I do.
Okay, who?
Bridget's teacher.
All right, does Bridget's teacher also wear a mask with her hijab?
She does. Mhm.
Have there been any communication issues between Bridget and her teacher or you and her teacher while the teacher has worn her hijab and the mask?
No, the teacher actually came out to me the other day, since it's a new school year, to tell me that Bridget is keeping her on her toes and is a delight in the classroom. So I know that they've already built a rapport.
Do you wear a mask?
I do.
Why?
Because I don't want to contract COVID, but I also don't want to get anybody sick. I mean, I've been vaccinated, so I know that my risk is lower, but I don't want to carry any guilt around with me of having unintentionally sickened anybody around me, friends, family, neighbors. I mean, I wouldn't want that hanging over me. So I wear it for me, but I also wear it for others.
Do you have anyone in your family that's immune compromised or have any sort of health issues?
I do. My mom has unspecified immune issues. We're not quite sure. I know she has a persistent cough left over from a reaction to Lipitor probably 7 or 8 years ago that hasn't gone away. She's got some other, she'll kill me for making this public record, but just like weird autoimmune things that come up time and again. So we're usually generally a little more cautious around her. And my husband's father is currently recovering from cancer treatment.
Going back to you and your children, when you come home, do you continue to wear masks? Do you take your masks off inside your home?
We take our masks off inside the home.
And are you able to, what sort of activities do you do with your children when you're home?
Well, we do homework. We like to play board games and card games. Bridget likes to help me cook in the kitchen. All sorts of normal family things.
Have you or your children been to a medical or doctor's appointment since March of 2020?
Yes.
And did any of those medical or doctor's appointments have any sort of requirements or procedures in order for you to go to that appointment?
Yes, their pediatrician's office requires masks, but they also send you a COVID questionnaire the day before your visit. So you can, say if you know anybody that's tested positive or if you've been running a fever, things like that. So you have to answer that. And then when you're at the office, you have to wear a mask.
Have you or your family traveled since March of 2020?
We have.
Okay. When did you travel?
Last summer, we went to Massachusetts. This summer, again, we went to Massachusetts. We stopped in Philadelphia. We took a trip to Washington, D.C. with the kids.
And the trip this year, how long ago was that?
It was in July.
Of 2021?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When you were in Washington, DC, did you go to any of the sites or see any of the things that are there?
Of course, we did the monuments. They weren't open yet. Things are still, well, at the time we were up there, things were just starting to open up. The zoo was open, so we went to the zoo. The Washington Monument, I think, was opening that day, but we couldn't get in, and everything else was just sporadically open. But we did get to go to the Spy Museum, which was pretty fun.
When you went to the Spy Museum, were there any sort of requirements as to entering it, or was it
Yes,
just fully open?
Yeah, no, we had to pick a time to go. So they timed entry. You had to get your temperature taken, and you had to wear a mask.
What are your thoughts on a spy museum requiring masks and your governor entering in order to prevent schools from mandating masks here?
Your Honor, relevance to what goes on in Washington, D.C.
Overall, did you say a spy museum?
Yes.
Did
Museum
say a
about
spy
spies?
museum. It was fun.
Okay, I missed that when I was last in DC. Overruled, you can answer.
It doesn't make sense. I mean, that's the best way I can say it.
Why doesn't it make sense?
Because what we know about COVID, tells us that there are certain things we can do to make sure that we're safe, and we should do them. So,
anyone you know have COVID? Or
yes,
have had COVID?
yes.
Okay, who?
Oh, geez. Dozens, I'd say. I mean, friends, family members, I mean, a fair amount.
And what were their symptoms like?
Some of them were asymptomatic. Some of them had flu-like symptoms. A few were hospitalized and one died.
Have you ever heard of a nut-free classroom?
I have.
What's a nut-free classroom? Can you explain that?
Sure. It's, when one of the kids in your child's classroom has some sort of nut allergy. So they ask any snack or lunch that you send in not contain anything with nuts or tree nuts. There's varying degree of allergies, but you have to make a certain lunch or send a certain snack.
Have your children ever been in a nut-free classroom?
They have, both of them at some point.
And did you comply with the school's decision to have a nut-free classroom?
Of course. I don't want to be the parent responsible for harming a classmate.
Are you familiar with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's recommendations or precautions for children's attendance in school?
Yes, I know that they recommend kids go in person. I know that they recommend masking, social distancing, and cleaning procedures.
Are you familiar with the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations for children's attendance at school?
Yeah, I believe it's the same. I think that they recommend masking for even the little kids, but I could be mixing those up.
Without a mask mandate, I mean, what's the harm? What's the harm to you? What's the harm to your children? Is there any?
There is.
What is it?
Obviously, we don't want our kids to get sick. Losing a kid is a parent's worst nightmare. And while I understand the risk of that is relatively low, there are a lot of things we don't know about other long-term symptoms or possible. There's just a lot we don't know. So it's worrisome. And I mean, sure, they might survive, but my son is just starting to get really good at playing tennis. He loves it. It means a lot to him. He's worked his tail off for a couple of years for this. And if he gets COVID, he probably won't die. That's not my main concern, but what if he has long-term breathing trouble and he can't do the things that he wants to do anymore? That would be devastating for him. It would be devastating for us. I wouldn't want to have him lose something that he really enjoys doing.
Is there any sort of, in Hillsborough County, if your child has COVID, is there any sort of requirements of the parents with regards to your child attending school, or are they sent home?
They're sent home. And I believe the quarantine's 10 days.
And during that time, are they able to learn? What's the provision for learning?
I think this year, I think you have to come to the school and pick up a packet each day of their work. Because I don't think that there's like a simultaneous e-learning option. Like, I don't think the teachers put any sort of class recordings, or they may. I don't want to like speak to that in depth, like definitely, but I know that you have to come pick up your work, and most of it is self-guided.
And we didn't speak as to how your children did with self-guided work. Did they have any self-guided work last year?
They did. And
how did they do with that?
About as well as can be expected for children under 10. Sometimes it was fine. Sometimes it was a struggle. There was a lot of fights. Part of the reason we did send them back was because my relationship with Bridget particularly was very strained, because I had to be mean mommy all the time, kind of lording over her shoulder, making her do her work. And she became very anxious. So, that's why we sent them back.
With regards to particularly Owen and his education, is there an online learning option for him?
I believe there's Hillsborough virtual and Florida virtual, but
why don't you do those?
They don't line up with the curriculum that he's currently learning. And if we did that, I mean, he would lose out on all of his social, development that's really important to him. And, he's in 5th grade this year. So he's like the big kid on campus, and he's pretty proud of that. And I don't want to take that away from him.
Why did you you're a plaintiff in this case. Why did you bring this lawsuit?
I just didn't feel like the governor was prioritizing our kids' health and safety. And, we always teach our kids to stand up for what they believe in and to, advocate for themselves. And I mean, unfortunately, they can't do that in this realm. So, I felt like it was something that needed to be done.
Why should local school boards be able to choose whether or not a district should mask?
Because they are in the community. They have the best resources available to how not only each school district's doing, but maybe each school within a district, because there's different kids in each school, right? Like the kids in high school can be vaccinated. So maybe we have a community with a high vaccination rate in one school, but then you still have these elementary schools that have no vaccination, and there's everything in between. So a one-size-fits-all policy of no masking doesn't seem to make much sense when the situation on the ground can be very changeable between districts and even between schools within the district, and the school board is best equipped to have that particular information available to them.
Do you believe masking is a parent choice issue?
I don't.
Why?
I mean, I would love for everybody to choose what they want to do with their kid, but if your choice puts others in harm's way or doesn't support the public health in general, then it becomes more of a community issue than a what I want to do issue. I mean, I take very seriously that I am my brother's keeper. We are in this together. This isn't going away without involvement from the community.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor. I tender the witness to the defense.
Who's that? Mr. Weisenhunt? Who's crossing?
Mr. Weisenhunt's with us.
Yeah, Mr. Weisenhunt's with plaintiff's counsel, Your Honor. So
Sorry.
that's
You
okay.
can cross too if he wishes to. Mr. Bean, how about you?
Thank
or
you,
Mr.
Your Honor.
Grable?
Thank you.
Okay.
Attorney Nell, Is there anything in the executive order that you've sued under, 21-175, that precludes your child from wearing a mask at school?
No,
Okay. In fact, the executive order doesn't mandate that your child wear a mask in school, correct?
correct.
Is there anything in the governor's executive order that prevents you from instructing your child to wear a mask at school?
No,
In fact, you've ordered your child to wear a mask at school, correct?
I mean, I wouldn't call it ordered. He would take issue with that, but yes, he wears a mask at school.
Okay. Does he wear a mask when he plays tennis?
He doesn't because it's not a team sport. You know, he's on the court by himself.
He's always playing by himself. He doesn't play with anybody. No one's across the court from him.
Yes, but are you aware of the size of a tennis court?
I've played it. So do you
Okay.
play, I used to bang balls against a wall. So that would is that what he does? He just bangs balls against a wall?
I
No,
think
he
she
plays on the
said
court.
There's somebody on the other side of the net from time to time. I think we all know the size of a tennis court, Mr. Bean.
We'll take a judicial notice of it, I guess, but you're,
Okay,
Attorney
I
Nell,
think
what
we
I'm
can.
asking is,
No objection.
I'm asking Attorney Nell, does your son play tennis with someone else?
Yes,
And does that person wear a mask when that person plays?
they do not.
Okay.
Actually, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes they do.
Okay, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, right?
Mhm.
Okay, are the tennis balls wiped down?
But he also doesn't lick them. So
Right, no, but you're the person he plays with is touching them, correct? He holds them before he tosses the ball and hits it, right?
he does.
The now under the executive order, the decision whether a child wears a mask at school is expressly reserved for a parent like you, correct?
It appears to be.
So
Are you going to ask every expert witness questions on the law? Because I sort of thought that was my job.
I didn't think that was an expert question, Your Honor. I thought
The
that
legal interpretation of the Florida Bill of Rights and the executive order, which I think is my job, not a witness's job. Even though the witness, I'm sure, is capable of doing it since she's an attorney, but that's not her role. She's here as a parent, not as I don't think I would permit an expert attorney being called to provide expert witness on legal issues.
under the rules, Your Honor, the court is permitted to hear expert witness testimony on the underlying issue, but that's not the issue here. She's the plaintiff and she's brought this lawsuit, and I'm merely testing her knowledge of the executive order. I'm not picking on her because she's an attorney, Your Honor. I do intend to ask every parent who's a plaintiff in this case what they understand their rights are under the executive order. I hope that they would know when they brought this lawsuit. If the court doesn't allow me to do it, then that's your prerogative.
I'll allow you to do it, but I just want both sides to know that I'm the one who makes the decision on what the order does or doesn't say from a legal standpoint. The other witnesses, if you want to hear what their opinion is on it, I'm not hearing an objection from anyone, but I'm just saying that's my job. And I'm saying that to both sides. So, but go ahead. If that's how you want to use your time, that's fine with me.
Well, I think it's important that we establish that it's an individual decision. That's all we were trying to establish, Your Honor.
But what's an individual decision?
The healthcare decision under the statute,
Under what statute?
1014.04.
What about 1014.03?
Our case is, I'm citing 1014.04, Your Honor. It's a healthcare decision for the parent to make. That's all I was asking this witness. May
All right,
I
go
proceed?
ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Attorney Nell, you do believe you can make the best decisions for your child's health, correct?
I do.
Do you believe that every child, every student learns the same way as your two children?
Of course not.
Does every child have the same emotions and mental circumstances as your two children?
Of course not.
Is it fair to say that you would agree that those other children, their parents would have a better idea of their healthcare needs of their child than you do, correct?
Objection calls
Sure,
for speculation.
Thank you.
I mean,
Sustained.
in,
Okay.
consultation with their
You
doctors.
don't have to answer, Ms. Nell.
The, are every child's social skills the same as your two kids?
Nope.
You
Objection
mentioned
to
your
that
son-
question and move to strike. Lack of foundation as to whether or not she knows about all these other people's children.
Granted, look.
She drives to school
Misty,
every
I
day.
recognize people are different and they have different ways they learn. They have different social skills. If that's your point, I understand it. I don't know that anybody really disputes that.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you can.
The, you said your son, the social component is very important for your son. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Why is that? You're talking about the social component at school. Why is that important to your son?
I believe it's pretty well established that kids need social interaction. But I have noticed nothing but good things since he's been back from homeschooling, and the majority of that has been with a mask and with everybody else wearing a mask.
And so you noticed a difference when your son was not in school as opposed to when he was at home learning, correct?
Yes.
You talked about the nut class. I'd never heard of that. I mean, I've heard of nuts in class, but then maybe some people think I am, but
I think she said nut-free class.
nut pre-class. Again, I'm not familiar with that. So the and you said both your children experienced that, correct?
Yes.
Did either of your children suffer any less of a social atmosphere because they had to sit through that class?
No. Well, let me expand on that.
Sure,
They
go ahead.
learned, I mean, it was a lesson for them in compassion, because they learned that, they have to eat something that maybe they don't love as much. I mean, I don't know if you smelled sun butter, which is the general alternative to peanut butter. It smells terrible. But they loved their friends and are willing to do that to keep them safe.
Okay, but they didn't suffer any type of depression or any other mental health issue, correct?
For not eating peanut butter?
In the classroom, as you described.
Correct.
Is the school uniform a medical device, do you think?
The same way a mask isn't. No, something you wear to school.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The same way a mask is not a medical device. It's something you wear to school.
So you disagree with the Food and Drug Administration that says a mask is a medical device?
I don't see it different than a seatbelt.
Do you have any medical training besides your legal training?
I do not.
Do you have any basis to disagree with the Food and Drug Administration's determination that a mask is a medical device when used to prevent COVID-19 spread?
Objection, Your Honor. I think we're getting to a legal conclusion.
Sustained.
Do you know what any long-term effects of wearing a mask are on children?
I don't believe there are that many, if any.
So you don't know.
No.
Okay. And I think you said you and your husband don't wear a mask in the house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And part of your lawsuit was that the governor's order violated his constitutional authorities because it directed school boards not to do something, correct?
Partly, yes.
In your case, the school board did exactly what you wanted it to do, correct?
They did what they felt was best.
It's what you want, right?
If it were my choice, yes.
Thank you.
If I were.
One moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Thank you, Attorney Now. I have nothing further.
Can you redirect?
No, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Nell.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. You're free to continue watching on YouTube if you'd like, or not watching. It's up to you.
May she
Thank you.
be released as a witness, Your Honor? Defense?
Yes, you're relieved as a witness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
who's next?
Judge, this time, this is again Tracy Sticko for the plaintiff.
Yes, ma'am.
We have Miss Kristen Thompson in the waiting room. We would call her next.
All right, I saw Ms. Thompson. Let's bring her in. Here she is. She'll be on in a minute. Okay, Ms. Thompson, good afternoon. I'm Judge Cooper. If you'll raise your right hand, I'll place you under oath. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Tico.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Thompson.
Hi.
Can you please introduce yourself to the court and spell your name for the court record?
Yes, it is Kristen Thompson, Kristen.
And Thompson, common spelling.
THOM as in Mary, PSON.
Okay, and in which city and county do you live in Florida?
I live in Gainesville, Florida, which is Alachua County.
And do you have school-aged children?
Yes,
Okay, how many kids do you have?
I have 2 children. Peyton is 7 and Bailey is 3.
Okay, and is Bailey in school yet?
Bailey is in preschool.
Okay, and is that a public school?
It is not a public school.
Peyton, on the other hand, you said she was 7.
She is 7.
And what school does she attend?
She attends Terwilliger.
And what grade is she in?
She's in 1st grade.
Okay, so that's Terwilliger Elementary.
Yes, Terwilliger Elementary School.
Let's talk about Peyton's health issues. We'll get right to the point. Does Peyton suffer from any health or medical issues which make her, let's say, more vulnerable than her healthy counterparts in 1st grade?
I wouldn't say she suffers. I hate that word, but yes, she does have medical complexities that make her a little bit more distinct from her other 1st grade peers.
Okay. Can you elaborate on some of her, and again, I don't want to use the word issues, but can you elaborate
Okay.
on the diagnosis for the judge?
Yes, absolutely. So Peyton was diagnosed at birth with a chromosomal abnormality called trisomy 18, which basically means that she has 3 chromosomes on her 18th chromosome. That also stems from the trisomy 18, several other medical conditions, including developmental delays. She has a ventricular septal defect, which is a hole in the heart. She has micronathia, also obstructive apnea, in which she has a tracheostomy for, and she breathes in through her neck area.
So is that what we commonly refer to as a trach tube?
Yes.
Okay.
A
Sorry.
trach is a normal abbreviation for it. She also had failure to thrive. So she has a feeding, a G tube, and so she feeds that way. She has scoliosis. She has a neurogenic bladder. I think that's the biggest ones.
Okay. So needless to say, she sees pediatricians and specialists.
Yeah, I think she has about 10 different pediatricians or specialists.
Before we get into that, let's talk about her circumstances at school. You said
Absolutely.
she goes to Terwilliger. It's really hard to pronounce.
No, right?
Is it a special program? How do they accommodate her needs at her elementary school?
So Peyton has an IEP, which is an individualized education plan, and she's actually zoned for a different school. However, because of Peyton's developmental delays, she is better suited for a program that Terwilliger Elementary has after school. So Terwilliger has this program, and then they also have typically developing children as well. So her classroom is all children who have a specific type of IEP and who need a little bit more intense services. For Peyton, her learning, how to do math or reading and writing isn't really the goal. So she has completely different goals than what other children who are in first grade do.
And how many students are in her class this year? Do you know?
Well, this year, only 4. Last year, I think she had like 8. But I think this year, quite a few of the parents decided to, according to the teacher, quite a few parents decided to withdraw their children and do homebound services.
Okay, and this was after COVID?
Yeah, this was once the COVID-19 numbers started increasing significantly, a lot of the families just didn't feel comfortable anymore.
Okay, and you have kept Peyton there during surges in Delta numbers, correct?
We have, yes.
And why is that?
Well, we keep Peyton at school because she has gone to public school since she was 3. So she aged out of early intervention at 3. And at that time, for people who are not familiar with that, they go to public school and they go to preschool at her local elementary school. And Peyton, I wish people could see her, because when I list off her disabilities and all of these things about her, she seems really bad. And her doctors always comment on how she looks much worse on paper than she does in person, but she thrives in an elementary classroom. She loves being around other students. And before COVID, we actually had her integrate into certain classes. So she would go to music and art classes with at that time it was kindergarten classes. So she went into one of the kindergarten classes with the typically developing children. And just so that people understand, Peyton, I held Peyton back in kindergarten. So she did 2 years of kindergarten for people so that makes sense.
And with obviously this slew of health challenges that Peyton deals with on a day-to-day basis, how do masks play in for her specifically?
So Peyton can't wear a mask because of her developmental delays. Also because she breathes in through her neck, a mask really isn't gonna protect her, nor will it protect other people if she's wearing a mask, because she breathes in through her trach. So for us, it's really vitally important that other people wear a mask to protect her as much as possible. When COVID first started, I tried so hard to get her to wear a mask because I knew that while it wouldn't be 100% effective for her because of the trach, that it would still significantly help her. Right. And we need other people to wear masks so that she doesn't get any of the germs coming to her. So the more other people can do it, the less it will affect her.
Well, let's talk about at school. Do the other students in her class wear masks, or are they sort of in a similar situation in terms of their dexterity?
Yeah. So a lot of the kids are very similar in their abilities as Peyton. I'm not as familiar because this is a new classroom, because this is a brand new school, and so this is a new classroom, and so with that being said, I'm not as familiar with the classroom and the students in there, but there is, I know another child that we're friends with that is wheelchair bound. And
as is Peyton, correct?
as is Peyton, yeah.
In terms of the masking issue, are there any other individuals who have access to her classroom throughout the day?
Yeah, so a lot of the students in the classroom receive other therapies. So they get physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. Sometimes they have ABA therapists, just all kinds of different therapists that come into the rooms. And that was another one of our concerns, is that these therapists also see children in other parts of the school. They also see children in other schools, and they're roaming around throughout the district schools, seeing children. So again, I know that when two people are wearing the mask, it prevents the spread more so than just one person. So if we can have both the student and the therapist wearing masks, that's going to be the most effective way of keeping them from getting COVID, which could eventually come back to to Peyton's very medically fragile classroom.
Right. So these specialists who come in on and off throughout the day to treat the different children, do they wear masks?
Absolutely.
And do the teachers wear masks?
Yep.
Okay. Now, when you're at home, how do you handle your transmission concerns?
Yeah, so Peyton receives in-home nursing care, as well as nurses that go to school with her. So everyone, regardless of whether they're vaccinated or not, when they come into our home, they do wear masks. We also make them either wash or hand sanitize their hands. If they even have it's allergies, sneeze, or cough or anything, nope, you're not allowed in my house. We try to keep our house as safe as possible, and try to follow the recommendations that we're getting from, places like the CDC and stuff like that.
Okay. When you have family and friends over, or, playmates of your other child, or does everybody wear a mask in your home?
Yeah, so we not really done a lot of play dates, but we do have one other family that my 3-year-old that we play with quite a bit. Actually, Bailey just had her 3rd birthday, and that was the same family that came over for her birthday party. So unfortunately, I had planned this really big birthday with a bunch of people, but then the numbers started going up, and then I canceled it, and we had that one friend come over. And I do try to, Bailey, for the most part, she's 3 and she will wear a mask. For the most part, she does pretty good with it. I mean, sometimes, she's a 3-year-old and she gets annoyed, but she does really well with it.
But in terms of you, your husband, adult family members, everyone comes with masks or vaccinated?
Yeah, so obviously my husband and I, when we're around Peyton, we don't wear a mask. But when we're out, we're taking every precaution possible because of Peyton. So we're constantly hand sanitizing, we're wearing masks. Sometimes if we're in a really crowded area, we'll put 2 masks on to make sure that we don't get anything. So we try to take as many precautions as possible.
Okay. I think you probably addressed this, but is Peyton vaccinated?
No, unfortunately, she's only 7, so she can't get the vaccine yet. But as soon as it's available for children under 12, both of my kids will be hopefully first in line.
Okay. And when these numbers started going up, how did your pediatrician, let me rephrase that. When the numbers started going up, and obviously your concerns, how did you and your husband decide to approach the mask issue? I suppose as compared to last year, where pretty much everybody was wearing masks.
Yeah. So we our school district enacted masks last year, and over the summer, actually we had a great summer. We don't want to wear a mask if we don't have to. We did a lot of stuff, we were having fun, and kind of easing off because we were following the numbers and the trends seemed like they were going down. So it seemed a little bit safer. So we relaxed a little bit. But as the summer went on and school got closer, the numbers started going up. And I felt pretty confident being in, Alachua County, that based off of the response that they had last year, that our school district would enact masks. And then I was waiting for their COVID-19 plan to come out, and it did. And then I believe the original one did have masks on it, but like I think it was like the very next day, it was said that they couldn't do a mask mandate. So I freaked out, because I thought that was what was going to happen.
A little bit more with respect to Peyton and masks. Obviously, as you discussed, her developmental challenges make it impossible for her to keep a mask on and take the precautions other kids do. How about her communication with people who are wearing masks? Have you observed any changes in her demeanor or her communication skills?
Not really, because Peyton has her, if you could experience her, you would understand. So it's hard to explain it, but Peyton has her own way of doing things, and she cues body language in many different ways. I have not really noticed. Her nurse, who has went to school with her for the last, I think she started last year with her, has not really noticed any barriers to her wearing a mask or the teachers wearing masks, because the teachers are really good at using alternative ways and kind of working around that, the mask being worn on them. So she hasn't really, it doesn't seem to be affecting her ability to learn or communicate with us or understand us.
And none of her specialists have expressed any concern for her communication abilities? Okay.
No.
And has Peyton been exposed to COVID?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the judge about that?
Yes. So last year, she was on quarantine only one time. A student, there's a paraprofessional in the classroom whose daughter tested positive. Subsequently, that paraprofessional also tested positive.
Back you up sorry to interrupt, Ms. Thompson. I'm going to back you up just a little bit so you can clarify paired professional.
Mm-hmm. So children who have IEPs sometimes need additional assistance throughout the day. So they get assigned basically like a teacher's aide almost that helps that specific child to do tasks throughout their day.
Okay. And I interrupted you, but you had been explaining what happened with the professional last year.
So that paraprofessional had come to school. She didn't realize her daughter, nobody realized they had it yet. And but that professional actually tested positive. Nobody else in the classroom ended up testing positive, which is good. In Peyton's classroom this year, 2 people have tested positive, and she was already on quarantine, which has again made us a little bit more nervous since Peyton can't wear a mask. So,
right. And I think you've given us some feedback, but why is it that you and your family decided to go forward with this lawsuit?
Okay, so there's a lot of reasons. First, we want to protect Peyton. I feel like as a parent, my first responsibility is my children. Ever since Peyton was born, her mortality has been front and center on our minds. Many people are not familiar with trisomy 18 because 50% of the children pass away in the first week of life. 90% of children with her diagnosis pass away in the first year. So the fact that she's 7 is an absolute miracle. And she's already overcome so many things in her life that I want to make sure that we continue to enact every single mitigation effort that is out there and that is possible. The other thing is, like we've mentioned before, we have in-home therapists or in-home nursing, and those nurses also have children who go to public school. And, if their children aren't doing the things that they need to do, then they could bring it to their home, which could subsequently come to our home. Also, I just kind of care about other children. Like, I care about their well-being. I'm, along with many other parents, unfortunately, are in that class of parents who have experienced their child sick. They have experienced their child on a ventilator. We've held our children down so they can get an IV while they're screaming and yelling because they can't get an IV on them. And that's not where parents want to be. You don't want to see your child like that. So we have a unique experience in that we have lived that life. Also, based off of what I've attended both of our school board meetings and what I've heard from the other parents who don't want their children to wear masks, is they have stated that they also, they're going to send their kids to school sick. They're not going to get a vaccine. They're not going to wear a mask. I'm going to send my kid to school sick. And that makes me scared to know that people are sending their kids to school sick. And our district has sent out several messages. Don't send your kid to school sick. Don't send your kid to school if they're waiting for a COVID or a COVID test. And they're still doing it. And because of these reasons, I think if people are wearing masks, it kind of protects everybody else from the people who are not, I guess, being responsible by sending their kids to school sick and stuff.
Let me ask you another question. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
In terms of Peyton's academic and developmental needs, do you have any other option?
No.
Is there any, virtual option for?
No. Peyton's developmental delays are such that we tried virtual school when school shut down in March of last year. And honestly, I just gave up. Like, we just quit trying because it wasn't working.
Okay. So if, let's say in a hypothetical world, if all kids were offered the alternative of virtual learning instead of masks, that wouldn't help Peyton?
No. And there's not a private school that she could go to either. There's really not other options that would work. She could do hospital homebound services, but that's also not a great option. We've done that in the past, and it's just not the same as being in school, and the services aren't the same. It's really, more like homeschooling than actual school.
And if I can just have a moment. In terms of particularized harm, I want to ask you, what harm will you or your family suffer if Alachua County or your child's school does not have the right to enact mask mandates?
Yeah, so
Speculation, Your Honor.
Overruled.
You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Peyton could get COVID, and our county has had a child that has died recently. So I would hate that to be an option, something that could happen, but it could happen if she got COVID. The other thing is based off of what I've heard at the school board from the CEO and the physicians who are at the University of Florida and Shands, our hospital systems here are becoming very overburdened right now. And because of that reason, they're saying that they're already canceling elective.
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
The objection is hearsay. She said that she's heard from people at University of Florida.
Yes, I directly heard them while they were speaking at the school board meeting.
Okay, overruled.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, so they're already telling us that the availability of services are limited. With that being said, children who are medically complex or have developmental delays, use these services more frequently. And if the hospitals are overburdened already, that means that there's going to be less services available for her when she needs it, or when these other children who have special needs it. And then also lastly, we're going to be stuck with a decision of where do we choose between our finances, the safety of our children, or their education, which no parent should have to be put in that situation.
Judge, may I just have one moment?
Sure.
That's all for now, Judge. I would tender the witness to defense.
All right. May Cross, assume Mr. Bean.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Ms. Thompson, is Alachua County under a mandatory mask mandate from its school board?
Yes, they
currently?
are.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. I assume there's no redirect.
That is correct, Judge. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Thompson, thank you very much. You are released as a witness. If you'd like to switch over and look at this site on YouTube. Second, this is how you get to it. This is not a plug. Second Judicial Circuit. You can Google that, and on that page, there's a YouTube button on the upper right-hand side you can click.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, let's see. We've gone over an hour, right, since we came back. Let's take, I think the court reporter and I are ready for another break. We have to remember she's probably the hardest working person in the whole group.
Agreed.
So let's take a break until 20 till 3, and then we'll come back with your next witness. Okay, by my watch, that's about 15 minutes. So we'll take a break until then. I'll see everyone back then.
And the next witness is?
I'm assuming it's Juan Dumois.
It's going to be flipped. We have a time issue, so it's going to be flipped to Quigley.
Okay, did I pronounce that name correctly? Or am I even close?
Quigley or Dumois?
Juan Dumois.
I think you got it on the money. C.
Polk County, that's where I'm from.
It works.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll see everyone back in about 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Okay, are we ready?
Ready, Your Honor.
Attendance are ready, Your Honor.
Who is our next witness?
Dr. Patty Quigley.
Okay, I've admitted Dr. Quigley.
Dr. Quigley, can you turn your camera on?
I think she is about to come up here. I'm going to unmute. Here we go. Here's Dr. Quigley. And Dr. Quigley. Hello. My name is, I'm Judge Cooper. And if you'll raise your right hand, I'll place you under oath. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. Who is Mr. Gallagher? Is this? Who's?
Mr. Sheridan will have her.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Mr. Sheridan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, can you state your full name?
Sure. Patricia Quigley.
Okay. And you are currently a medical doctor?
I am, yes.
And what is your area of practice?
A pediatric hospital medicine.
Okay. Briefly, before we get into questions specifically related to what we're here to talk about today, I just wanted to talk a moment about your qualifications. If you could give us just a summary of your education since undergrad through present and any other relevant certifications or publications, that sort of thing that you've been involved with.
Okay. Let's see. I graduated from college, University of Wisconsin in 2001, medical school at Tufts University in 2006, residency in general pediatrics in 2009 from the University of Wisconsin, and then chief residency from also at University of Wisconsin in 2010. I've completed a master's in medical education. That was at the University of Iowa in 2014. Let's see. I also have held a variety. Back up a second. I'm an assistant professor of pediatrics through Johns Hopkins University. I've held a variety of leadership roles.
Hold on for 1 second.
Sure.
Judge Cooper stepped away from the computer. I just want to make sure. Okay, go ahead.
Get a clean cup.
Okay.
A variety of leadership roles in medical education, both at my current institution and in previous employment.
Okay. Now, your practice, where is it located? Where do you do the bulk of your work?
Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
Okay. All right. And you've been working there at least from 2020 to present?
Since 2015.
Okay. Have you had the opportunity through that practice to treat patients with COVID?
I have.
And as far as ages, has it all been children under a certain age?
It has been younger children.
Okay.
Before, I would say last summer it was, and previously it was all ages.
Okay. Have you noticed a difference in the volume of patients from last summer and fall to this summer and fall?
Yes.
Okay. Can you speak on that for the court?
Sure. It most recently, especially since the middle of July, our numbers have increased dramatically. My most recent time on service, I had about 20 to 25% of my patients were COVID positive patients who were admitted specifically for reasons associated with having COVID. Before that, it was a much, much smaller number.
And do you have an opinion as to why that number has increased?
I think because of the Delta variant being much more out in the community.
Do you consult with or rely upon the CDC recommendations as far as they relate to COVID?
Yes.
Okay. As far as an authority, in what regard do you hold the CDC?
Oh, very high.
What about the APA?
The American Academy of Pediatrics.
Yes. Sorry,
AAP. Yes, also specifically for children.
Okay. And are you aware of what the CDC recommendations are and AAP recommendations are as far as children wearing masks in schools?
I am.
And what are those recommendations?
that children in school, indoors, everyone should be wearing a mask if they're over age 2.
Okay. Now, we have spoken today a little bit about the survivor rate of children contracting COVID, and there's been some talk as far as what impact potentially having a mask might have on children socially. My question for you is the long-term effects of COVID. Do you have any experience, or have you done any study into what impact contracting COVID might have long-term for these children?
So one of the concerns that we have seen over the last year or so is that a significant number of children, excuse me, I hear my children, speaking of which, just a moment.
Am I to understand that you have COVID currently?
I do not have COVID. 2 of my children do.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's why they're home.
If Dr. Quigley, anytime you need to take a break, go ahead and do so.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hear them downstairs. I think it's okay right now.
Okay.
I'm going to try and make this one quick, Dr. Quigley. I'll get you out of here as quickly as I can. Do you need me to repeat that last question?
Could you please repeat the question?
Okay. I had asked you about what concerns, if any, you have regarding the long-term effects of contracting COVID on children under 12.
One of our concerns is the possibility of something called long COVID that we've seen more in adults, but have seen a fair number in some studies show up to, in some studies, 10%, sometimes as much as 40 or 50% of children will have long-term symptoms after COVID, even when they've had a mild infection.
Can you give the court some understanding of what you mean when you say long COVID?
So that could be, it means up to 4 months or longer of symptoms. Sometimes it's only one symptom, cough or headache. Often fogginess is a common concern. And sometimes that really will interfere with their ability to do their daily activities.
Academics,
certainly.
extracurricular activities,
Absolutely.
socializing with friends.
Yes.
Okay. Have you noticed any, for the lack of a better phrase, unexpected side effects from contracting COVID in minor children?
One of the things I've noticed recently in my care of patients is children who have showed up with brain effects of their COVID, children with seizures, children with encephalitis. That is something I hadn't personally seen before the last month.
Can we unpack those a little bit as far as the side effects impacting the brain? What specifically are you referring to?
So encephalitis means infection of the brain,
Okay.
in very general terms. The patients I'm thinking of specifically, there's one in particular who had, she was hospitalized for quite some time, a couple of weeks at least, and had intractable headaches, developed some neurological side effects as well, including slurring of her speech, some difficulty walking.
You also mentioned seizures. Was this related to the brain infection, or was this separate?
This was a different patient with
Okay.
whose presenting symptom for COVID was seizures.
Okay. Have you lost any patients to COVID since fall of last year?
I have not, no.
Okay. And are you recommending to the parents of the children that you treat that the children mask in school?
Yes.
Why do you feel it's important for children to mask in school?
Because it is one thing that we can do to mitigate the spread of the virus.
Do you feel it's important for both someone who might have it and someone might catch it to be wearing a mask?
Yes.
And why is that important?
Because the person who has COVID but may not know it can spread it very easily if they're not wearing a mask. The mask is the only way we really have to prevent them from spreading it, particularly when they're asymptomatic.
Referring you, if I can, to what was previously marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 13. Have you had an opportunity to review that?
I have.
And what is that?
That is a description of long COVID in children.
Okay.
A review of studies.
And does this basically break down what it was you were referring to earlier when you were testifying to the court regarding long COVID?
It does.
Judge, it's already been admitted into evidence, so I'm not going to ask to move it into evidence again.
Okay.
Do you feel that masks are more important for the population under 12 than the population over 12?
I believe that they're important for everyone,
Sure.
and particularly important for people who are unvaccinated. So yes, those under 12.
Okay. Have you asked your children to wear masks in school?
They do. Yes.
Can I just have one moment, Your Honor? I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Cross.
Just briefly, Your Honor, and Doctor, if you don't hear your children for much longer, that might be an issue. So usually when I heard my children, I felt better about it. So, so Dr. Quigley, do you know, is Dr. Juan Dumoy a colleague of yours?
Yes.
And Dr. Kreisman?
Yes.
And have you talked to Dr. Kreisman and Dr. Dumoy about this case and students wearing masks in a classroom?
Not recently.
Not recently, in the last week. Have you discussed?
No.
No, thank you.
Not
Do you
in
know,
months.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
No, it's been months at least.
Thank you. How about Dr. Unash from the University of South Florida? Have you ever spoken to him about students wearing masks in a classroom?
No.
Okay. Doctor, are you aware of any studies that show that mask wearing on children, student age, is not harmful?
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure. Are you aware of any scientific studies that have been completed that shows that mask wearing by children in the classroom is not harmful?
No, I'm not aware of any studies of that sort.
Doctor, you spoke about the Center for Disease Control. Are you aware of the May 21st study that was produced by the CDC? Studied Georgia students?
No, I'm not.
You'd not heard that their study indicated that there was no appreciable difference between mask wearing students and non-mask wearing students. You weren't aware of that?
Not that specific study.
Doctor, you have a website that is devoted to mental health. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Doctor, are you aware of the article from Frontiers in Psychology from May of 21 that says masking emotion, face mask impair how we read emotions?
Is this article in evidence?
Yes. Sorry. Hold on one second, sir. It's exhibit 40. Okay, we have our exhibit list. I'm sorry, we have not admitted it into evidence, but it's on our exhibit list, which we've discussed back and forth. Regardless,
just to be clear, was this one of the exhibits that we agreed at the beginning that we're moving in, or is this in addition to what we discussed this morning?
This is in addition. I think this is a supplemental one that's been added after we discussed this morning. Would you like to withhold your objection?
I wouldn't want to withhold my objection. I mean, I think it might be hearsay if the doctor hasn't based her opinion on that.
I don't think he's found out yet whether she's familiar with it or not.
Okay, I'll wait.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, are you aware of the publication called Frontiers in Psychology, Doctor?
No.
Okay. You're aware of the National Institute of Health?
I am.
Are you aware of an article that was posted on its website, the pediatric anxiety associated with altered facial emotional recognition?
No.
I noticed before you started testifying today, you took off your mask. You recall that?
I do.
Do you agree that the fact that you took off your mask made it easier for you to communicate?
Yes.
Do you know of any scientific studies that have examined whether students in classroom wearing masks have suffered any type of mood changes?
No.
About same question, mask wearing for students. Any of them ever report any studies on students suffering from discomfortable breathing?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Are you aware of any scientific studies that for students with mask wearing in classrooms that suffered from depression?
No.
In your practice, you mentioned that you're seeing an uptick in COVID cases and you related it to the Delta variant. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Obviously you're living it in where you work, but can you point to any scientific studies that indicate that?
That indicate it's because of the Delta variant?
Yes, ma'am.
There are multiple studies indicating that the Delta variant is much more contagious than previous strains.
Anything though to support your statement that the uptick in patients that you're seeing are due solely to the Delta variant?
We also know that the Delta variant is the predominant strain in Florida right now.
But understand that, no,
Mhm.
but there's no scientific study that you could point me to, correct?
Mhm. No.
Doctor, have you had any children admitted under your care that suffered from depression because of the lockdown a year ago?
Yes.
And doctor, you mentioned the long-term COVID and the possibility of effects of long-term COVID. Are there any scientific studies that you could point me to right now?
I could certainly the studies that were cited in Exhibit 13.
Okay. And have you looked at Plaintiff's Exhibit 18, which compared classrooms with mask wearing with classrooms, school districts without mask wearing?
Is that the study from Brown?
No.
No, it's a different one.
Yeah.
I did review it. Yes,
So today's exhibit, not the Brown University one, but the one from this morning?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What would be your explanation as to why the difference is de minimis between counties where there was mask wearing mandated and where there was non-mandated mask wearing. Do you have?
Just,
you have an
sorry to
explanation for that?
interject. Did
Sure.
you mean plaintiffs 18 or defendants 18?
I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction. I meant defendants 18. I apologize.
Oh, no, that I have not seen.
I apologize. Thank you for that clarification. I didn't mean to confuse you, Dr. Quigley. Are you aware of the data that reflects that in Duval County for 2020, I'm sorry, Florida districts 2020 to 2021 show a negligent or de minimis difference between counties that had mandated masking as opposed to counties that didn't have mandated masking?
I am.
And what would be your explanation as to why the difference was de minimis? I think it was 3%.
I think it is very hard to assign a causal relationship. There are many, many factors that go into what determines the infection rate that we're seeing in different that we saw in different counties in 2020 and 2021.
Hillsborough County is under a mandatory mask mandate for its students, correct?
Yes,
Yet you're still seeing an increase in patients, correct?
yes.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Quigley, thank you for your time today and good luck with your kids.
Okay, Mr. Sheridan, any redirect for Dr. Quigley?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay,
Dr. Quigley, do you have anybody sitting in the room within 6 feet of you?
No,
All right. Are you aware of when the Hillsborough County mask mandate went into effect?
last week.
Would you expect to see any appreciable difference in the direction of COVID cases in less than a week's time since that mask mandate went into effect?
No,
All right. This May CDC report that Mr. Bean has brought up repeatedly, is there anything significant about the fact that it was done in May of this year that you might remark upon as far as it relates to the timing of that report to the resurgence of or the increase in the Delta variant here in the state of Florida?
that information would have been based on previous strains.
Okay, so that May report would have been dealt on pre-Delta strains.
Correct.
The exhibit that Mr. Bean was asking you about, defendants number 18, it's a chart that the governor has used repeatedly to try and speak to the efficacy of wearing masks in schools. Are you familiar with that chart? The exhibit 18 that he just asked you about as far as differences between schools with mandates and without.
Yes, I've seen that chart.
Okay. Does anything about that chart address what it was that they're characterizing as a mask mandate?
No,
Does it address how long these mask mandates were in effect?
no,
Okay. Are you aware of any studies that show that masks are effective?
yes.
Okay. Can you, what studies are those, if you can specify?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure I can tell you
That's
exact names.
That's fine. Do patients have to wear masks to be admitted into the hospital?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Do patients have to wear masks to be admitted into your practice?
Yes,
Do doctors have to wear masks in the hospital
at all times.
and in your practice?
Yes,
Have you treated any patients suffering from depression as a result of having to wear a mask?
No.
How long does it typically take from getting a positive COVID test to hospitalization? What's the turnaround time frame?
What I have seen recently is, children coming to the hospital almost immediately after they have symptoms. It's a very short turnaround, often diagnosed in the hospital.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Can we release Dr. Quigley as a witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Quigley, thank you very much. Good luck with your kids.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking time out for us.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, who's next? Well, if Mr. Gallagher wanted me to hear that, I think he was.
I think Mr. Gallagher's doing Dr. Dumois.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
sorry,
Dr. Dumois?
that pesky thing. Yes,
All
his
right.
name's called Dr. Dubois.
Okay, hold on. Juan Dumois is now admitted. Doctor, let's see, connecting to audio. Dr. Dumois, if you can hear me, I'm Judge Cooper. If you'll raise your right hand, I'll place you under oath. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Gallagher, go ahead.
Thank you, Honor. Good afternoon, Doctor. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
So could you please provide a brief background of your credentials and training and education for the court's reference?
Okay. I got my medical degree at the University of South Florida in Tampa. I then did my residency in pediatrics at USF and Alton Hospital. I then completed a fellowship in pediatric infectious diseases in Washington, D.C. at the Children's National Medical Center and the NIH. And then right after finishing that training, I came back to St. Petersburg as an attending physician in pediatric infectious diseases and have been here doing that for 28 years. I'm also in charge of continuing medical education here in the training of residents and nurses and medical students for the last 20 years. That's one passion of mine. But most of my time is spent in taking care of patients and teaching.
And I know it's probably redundant, but are you a licensed physician?
Yes, I am.
In what state?
In Florida.
And for how long?
Since 1989.
And could you describe a little bit about the setting in which you practice? I know you indicate you teach as well as treat patients. What current setting are you in right now?
So I'm at a pediatric hospital. I'm at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, although I will say that I'm speaking on my own behalf and not on behalf of the hospital. I will see patients who have been admitted into the hospital with infections or who are thought to maybe have an infection in order to help make a diagnosis. And then I will also see children who are not sick enough to be hospitalized, but are referred to my clinic to assist the pediatrician in figuring out a problem or treating a documented infection.
What would you characterize your primary area of practice to be?
The evaluation and management of children with any kind of documented or suspected infection.
Is it fair to call that a pediatric infectious disease practice?
Yes.
Do you have occasion to treat patients with COVID in your practice?
Yes, I have.
Have you had occasion to have any of your patients die as a result of COVID?
Yes.
When did you first begin treating patients with COVID?
In early 2020.
And what are you seeing in terms of patients presenting with COVID in terms of volume?
Well, in volume, the numbers have gone up quite a bit lately. At our hospital, for the week ending June 27th, we diagnosed 2 children with COVID that entire week. For the week ending August 14th, we had 110 tests positive. So that was like a 50% increase in 6 weeks. Not 50%, I'm sorry, 50-fold increase.
And what kind of numbers are you seeing in terms of school-age children?
So in school-age children, we have seen quite a few. Some numbers that I've seen for Pinellas County is that over the last month, the number of children between 5 and 10 years of age has increased about 20-fold. We've seen a similar increase in the number of children 11 to 17 diagnosed with COVID as well.
How would you compare the children that are presenting with COVID from the prior school year to the current school year right now?
So we're seeing similar proportions of a majority of children who are diagnosed with COVID in the emergency center are sent home to be managed at home. And then a minority of them are being hospitalized either with severe COVID or some other manifestation of COVID. But the overall numbers are higher because the overall infection numbers are higher.
And we had heard from Dr. Unash earlier about an R-naught ratio. What would you attach the current R-naught figures you're seeing right now?
Well, I think they correlate very well with the numbers that we're seeing now. So the estimated R-naught for the Delta variant of COVID that we're seeing as the major variant is estimated to be between 6 and 8, compared to the original COVID strain a year ago had an R-naught estimate of 2 or 3. So we think that it's about 3 times more contagious than the original COVID last year that we were dealing with in schools.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 20, but page 9 of that, regarding the R-naught comparisons. And let's see, we're there. Are you able to see the page 2 of 9 in the bottom right corner? Are you able to see that?
Yes.
And if you would explain how this might extrapolate the difference in transmissibility between the original strain and the current strain, and then with regard to other infectious diseases as well.
So the R-naught means that we expect that an infected person will then spread the infection through the course of their normal activities while they are infected to a certain number of other people. So an R-naught of 2 means that infected person would likely spread it to 2. So in this graph, toward the upper left, we see COVID-19, the original strain, had an R-naught of 3 people in this graph. I had said 2 to 3, meaning that one infected person, while they're sick, would likely spread it to 3 people. In comparison, just below that and to the left, we see the 1918 pandemic flu and Ebola virus had an R-naught of 2, a little less contagious, but more deadly. Then we see a little bit to the right of Ebola, HIV and the original SARS over 15 years ago had an R-naught of 4. Now, back above the horizontal line, we see COVID-19 Delta strain on this graph with an R-naught of 7. So 7 people might be infected from one contagious person who's not wearing a mask and doing their normal things. Chickenpox is just a little more contagious with an R-naught estimate of around 9 to 11. On this graph, it's 10. Chickenpox is quite contagious. It's one of the most contagious common infections that we see in kids. Fortunately, we don't see much of it because of the vaccine that was introduced in 1995. On the far lower right, measles is the most contagious thing that we know of, with an R-naught of 18. And we know that in a household where one person has measles, at least 90% of susceptible people in that household will get infected.
So knowing what the R-naught symbolizes, can you help us understand the positivity rating in terms of how those 2 numbers can project and again extrapolate upon how serious an illness might be?
Well, if we start with an R-naught of 3, and one person infects 3 people, then each of those 3 people infect 3 other people. So now you have 12 people infected after the first person who was infected. If the R naught is 8, then one person will, let's say 6, one person will infect 6 other people. Those 6 people will each infect 6 other people. So now we're talking about 42 people infected with just 2 cycles of infection from that one person. So the virus can spread much more quickly in a short period of time compared to a virus with a smaller R naught.
And is that alarming in terms of your practice as a pediatric infectious disease doctor?
It is. It is alarming in my practice and for that of all general pediatricians. I was just on the phone earlier with a general pediatrician in Tampa who said that among 611 patients she saw in clinic this morning, 6 tested positive for COVID.
Your Honor, I move to strike hearsay. Thank you.
With regard to the positivity rating,
Denied.
with regard to the positivity rating, we've seen recently statistics that we have a roughly a 20% positivity rating in Florida, generally speaking. What does that mean?
The positivity rating refers to what proportion of COVID tests come back positive. So a positivity rating of 20% means that 20% of 100 tests came back positive. When there's more activity of the virus in a community, generally the positivity rating rises.
And what is the net result of a high positivity rating plus a high R naught?
A high R naught generally leads to higher positivity ratings until the outbreak is brought under control.
Now, you indicate that you had experience with the pre-Delta variant last summer, last year. How would you compare the patients you're seeing with regard to the Delta variant versus the prior Alpha variant or the initial Wuhan variant?
So I think that in general, the severity of the cases we see in the hospital are similar to last year, but with the exception that we have seen several more children with inflammation in the brain this year than last year, which is not expected. It was an uncommon finding last year. And now I and my colleagues have been asked to see several children with this complication of COVID.
Are there any other notable COVID-related byproducts or COVID-related symptoms?
There's one really significant one called MISC, multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. This is triggered by COVID, and it causes inflammation throughout the body. And these children are very sick. Most of them have inflammation in the heart, so that we have to do careful monitoring of their heart function in the intensive care unit. We have to treat that inflammation aggressively. And when they go home after a week or so, they often have to remain on these anti-inflammatory medications for weeks or months because of the prolonged nature of this particular illness with COVID.
In your current practice, do you rely upon the CDC recommendations regarding post-Delta COVID scenarios?
Yes.
And what does the CDC recommend in terms of masking in an indoor school setting?
The CDC acknowledges that indoor school settings are better for children overall than virtual. And they acknowledge that most kids are not immunized and that the Delta variant is very contagious. So they recommend universal masking in schools.
To that end, do you find that children under 12 who can't be vaccinated would be at a greater risk for contracting COVID?
They are at greater risk because they cannot be vaccinated yet.
In your practice, do you also rely upon AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, recommendations relative to COVID masking in schools?
Yes.
And what does their recommendation yield in those terms?
Pretty much the same as the CDC, recognizing the importance of in-school attendance and that universal masking is the best way to keep kids safe in schools.
Do you know of any medical societies, associations, or group of physicians that would not endorse mandatory masking for indoor schools currently?
I don't.
Do you know of any kind of credible scientific medical data that would extrapolate in some ways masking can cause either physiological harm or psychological harm for children?
So I'm not aware of any data that shows that there's any physical or medical harm to a child who's wearing a mask. I am aware of concerns that masking may be an issue for certain special needs children in whom it is very helpful for them to see an adult's face, such as children who are deaf or children who are autistic. Our therapists here at the hospital have addressed that by getting special masks with a clear window so that their patients can see their mouths.
And would also the availability of parents having interactions maskless with those children mitigate against those concerns?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. With regard to those populations that would need to see the face, where you'd have those clear masks, would the availability of parents and those children interacting in a maskless setting, say at home, mitigate those concerns of developmental disorders?
Yes, it would.
Have you heard of a Dr. Bhattacharya out of Stanford University?
I have, as a result of his affidavit for this hearing.
And have you had occasion to review generally his opinions on the area of masking?
Yes, through the affidavit.
Sure. And in your own terms, what would you indicate that his conclusions yield?
He seems to conclude that masking for children in schools offers no benefit in preventing the transmission of COVID-19 and has no effects on further transmission outside the school setting for the community at large.
And do you agree with those conclusions?
No.
Have you had occasion to review the opinions of Dr. Bhattacharya regarding the issue of vulnerability of children to contract COVID?
Yes.
And what would those conclusions just generally be in your own words?
He emphasizes that most children do well when infected with COVID-19, and that they are unlikely to spread COVID to their families.
And would you agree with those conclusions?
I do. However, he leaves out relevant information that the children who do not do well can do very poorly.
And you had occasions of children dying as a result of COVID in your practice.
Yes.
In your practice, do you recommend masking as a mitigation measure?
Yes.
And in your professional opinion as a doctor with experience in pediatric infectious disease, do you believe that masks are effective at deterring the spread of COVID?
Yes.
Do you routinely review medical journals and scholarly pieces on your practice area?
Yes.
Have you had occasion to review what's been labeled as the Brown University study?
Yes, I have.
And what does that study say generally?
The study was an analysis looking at school districts and whether mask mandates were in place, and to try to draw any correlation with outbreaks of COVID-19. For Florida specifically, they tried to compare infection rates in schools and districts that had mandates versus those that didn't. And they found that there was no correlation when there were mandates or if there were not.
And do you understand the Brown University study to be one that was peer-reviewed or not peer-reviewed?
I honestly don't recall if it was peer-reviewed or not.
If a document is a preprint, what does that mean in terms of its peer review?
Oh, that means that it was published without peer review.
And what's the significance of that relative to a peer-reviewed study?
Well, there is potential concern that there are problems in the way the study was reported because peer reviewers tend to be specialists on the subject matter, and they then provide commentary on information that may have been excluded or needs to be changed in the final publication.
So it's fair to say that oversight would lend credibility to a peer-reviewed piece.
Yes.
Do you have knowledge over whether or not certain parts of the Brown University study were retracted by its authors?
I do not.
And if things were retracted from a study, what would the significance of that be?
It would suggest that the authors had significant concerns about some information that was presented in the publication and no longer had confidence in attaching their names to the publication.
And in your review of the Brown University study, did you find it to be using current data relying upon Delta variant infections or other data?
It did not contain any data regarding the Delta variant because the study ended in April of this year, and we had not yet seen much of the Delta variant at that time.
And there's been a lot spoken about what the consensus of medical peer-reviewed data is on masking. And what have you found to be the consensus, generally speaking, of recommending masking in schools or not?
What I've seen is many studies that have looked at how schools dealt with the pandemic during the last school year, and that by instituting multiple measures, including masking and social distancing and hand hygiene, that schools that did that consistently were able to significantly mitigate the number of outbreaks of COVID-19 in their schools. And from a practical point of view, many of those schools that attempted to could not successfully do the social distancing because they'd still have 30 kids in a classroom.
So is it fair to say that generally the consensus of medical science recommends masking in indoor schools?
Yes.
Would you agree that masks are even more important to an under 12 population given their vaccination ineligibility?
Yes.
What do you believe will happen in the absence of mandatory masking in an indoor school setting?
Objection calls for speculation.
He's a physician with experience in these areas.
Would you restate the question, please?
Sure. What do you believe the likely outcome would be were there not to be mandatory masking in the school setting?
All right, he can answer that question. If it's within more likely than not. If it's counted more likely than not.
Because what we know about the contagiousness of the Delta variant and what we know about the effectiveness of masks in trying to prevent transmission, with children going to schools and not wearing masks, it's inevitable that the COVID-19 coronavirus will be introduced and you will have outbreaks leading to school closures and quarantining of lots of kids.
If you have children, would they mask in schools?
I do not, because my children are older, they're in their 20s.
Would you recommend masking for children in schools as a mitigation measure?
Oh, if my children were in school, they definitely would wear masks. I recommend it to every single set of parents that are asking me about how to protect their children when they go to schools. I'm getting that question routinely in my clinic, regardless of the reason that the child is coming to see me.
I will tender the witness to counsel for the defense.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean?
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Doctor, for the school board districts in the state of Florida that do not have a mandatory mask mandate, how is it that their schools are still open if you believe that the virus is going to spread so much? It has not done so already, correct?
From my understanding is that hundreds of children have already been diagnosed with COVID, with thousands being quarantined across the state. So I think it already is causing a problem.
I didn't say it wasn't going to cause a problem. You said it was going to close schools, and I'm asking you if you know of any districts that do not have a mandatory mask mandate that have had to close a school yet.
Oh, no, not yet.
Thank you. The doctor, you rely on the CDC and the AAP guidelines and recommendations for saying that mandatory masking should occur in the Florida schools, correct?
Yes.
Okay, are you aware of the May 2021 study from the CDC, which found no negligible difference between those schools that mandatory masked, and those schools that did not?
No, I can't cite that particular study.
Do you know that that was a CDC study, though?
Only because you said so.
Okay. I don't want to misrepresent anything. It's on the CDC website. It's an exhibit in our case. So, Dr.
Do you have a number so I can make sure I look at that tonight?
Yes, Your Honor. Do you have the number? Your Honor, it's called Mask Use and Ventilation Improvements to Reduce COVID-19 Incidents in Elementary Schools, Georgia, November 16, December 11, 2020. My teammate is getting the exhibit number, Your Honor.
I think if it was sent Friday, I think I've seen that, but I just want to look at it again. All right, thank you. When you get that, you can give that to me later on, the exhibit.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Doctor, what scientific evidence currently exists that says mask wearing does no harm? Are you aware of any?
There have been studies looking at children wearing masks in school settings to see if it affects their ability to learn or their interactions with parents and teachers, and showing no significant effect in those. With regard to other harms, I've not seen any studies that document increased infection rates from wearing masks or respiratory problems, except in patients who already have chronic respiratory problems, where putting anything on their face may be a hindrance to their breathing.
Doctor, the CDC and the AAP guidelines, do you know what studies they are using for the support their guidelines? What scientific studies?
I can't cite specific ones, but I know that each refers to multiple different studies.
Okay, but you can't recite to one as you sit here today?
No.
Okay, and then similarly, in your last answer, you said there are multiple studies. Can you cite to one of the studies to which you're referring?
Can you remind me what my last answer was answering? What question?
Sure. We were asking you about what scientific evidence currently exists that says mask wearing does no harm. And you said there were, I think you said several studies. I wanted to know which studies to which you were referring.
Yeah, I can't cite any of those specifically. I know that I've read a variety of studies over the last year to that effect. I would have to look them up to cite them.
Yes, sir. And then what scientific studies to which would you identify that say that the mask wearing actually reduces the spread of the virus?
So there have been a variety of studies that have tried to analyze that in experimental situations, creating aerosolized particles and looking at the transmission of the particles through a filter mask. And they looked at different kinds of masks, whether they were manufactured respirators or cloth masks. There have been studies looking at infection rates in specific indoor environments to see if masks could be of benefit in decreasing transmission. There was one specific case study in which two women working as hairstylists in a salon who were both asymptomatically infected with COVID and saw over 130 clients over the course of the week, and all the clients wore masks, failed to transmit it to a single client.
Any schoolroom, student classroom studies, doctor?
There have been studies that look at classroom settings where they did a combination of different interventions, including masking, distancing, and hygiene.
And the fact that they didn't have a control group, does that lessen the significance of that study, in your opinion?
I can't cite whether or not some of these specific studies had controlled groups.
But having a control group gives a little bit more credence to the study. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Doctor, what percentage of effectiveness would you give to a cloth mask?
There are a lot of variables that go into the effectiveness of a cloth mask. For example, the number of layers, the thread count in the mask. Generally, I'll advise families who are shopping for one that if they hold it up to the light and it's hard to see through, it's better than one that you hold up to the light and you can see through. It also depends upon how well the mask fits and if it will stay on. It's been shown that children, even at a young age of 3, 4, 5, will wear a mask if they're involved in selecting the mask because a particular design can have a huge impact on their compliance with wearing the mask. If they're going to wear the mask, it's going to be more effective than the fanciest mask that they don't wear. And then it should fit snugly around the nose, the sides, and under the chin. A mask that has all those features is going to be much more effective than one that doesn't.
Madam Co-Reporter, I lost the doctor for a second. Are you confident in catching his testimony? Yes, you're nodding your head. Very good. Okay, so doctor, you're saying that the mask should be tight around the nose and the cheek area, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if it's not, that would reduce the effectiveness of the mask, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the N95, I've learned through the weekend, defends pretty much 95% of the viruses. Is that why it's called N95?
It filters out 95% of particles in test situations, yes.
And what is the average size of a particle of the Delta variant?
Those are on the order of a few microns, micrometers.
One expert has said that the size of the virus is the distance your fingernail grows in 90 seconds. Would you agree with that?
I don't know.
Okay. But that would be pretty tiny, right?
Sounds like it.
Okay. Well, do you think that the Delta variant virus is a tiny particle?
It is small, as are all viruses.
If it's not the size of a fingernail that grows in 90 seconds, how small is it, doctor, typically?
The coronavirus could fit thousands of copies of itself within a single human cell. And as small as it is, it's still a somewhat sizable particle compared to other things that we know about, like oxygen and carbon dioxide, which are just a few atoms. It's been estimated that a coronavirus is composed of about 5 billion atoms. So it can be filtered out through certain types of filters.
But as you testified, if the mask isn't worn tightly in the direction that you gave, that would enhance the opportunity for the virus to get into the human, correct?
Yes.
You have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. Your Honor, the defendants have nothing further. Thank you, Doctor.
Can you redirect?
A few brief questions, Your Honor. The discussion was made of the May 2021 CDC study. If you would, could you refresh the court on the time frame that the Delta variant began to manifest in the United States?
The Delta variant became predominant in July, where by then it was definitely the most common variant in the United States. Before that, we were seeing it introduced and slowly increasing in frequency, but not until July was it dominant.
In connection with the CDC's response over the pendency of this entire pandemic, has there been occasion for the CDC to revise recommendations as conditions change?
Those opportunities for the CDC to revise their recommendations have occurred repeatedly over the last year and a half as new information came out, yes.
And it's fair to say that they have been very responsive to incorporating new data, new information, and new recommendations.
I think more so in the last, in this year than last year. Recently, yes.
And is it fair to say that you would probably not see any kind of Delta variant data in a study that was commissioned or finalized in May of 2021?
I don't recall that.
And you say that there would be probably a dearth or no data at all on Delta during the span of time of June and May and April and March of 2021.
Yes, correct.
I have no further questions, or at least the witness.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, doctor. You're released as a witness and you're free to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Your Honor.
Okay. All right, so counsel for both sides. This Georgia study's been mentioned enough. I'm trying to figure out which one it is so I could look at it. Is this, I can't find an exhibit number, but I found online a CDC study that was published May 21.
Yes, Your Honor.
Entitled Morbidity and More Mask Use and Ventilation Improvements to Improve COVID-19 Incidents in Elementary Schools, Georgia, November 16th to December 11th. Is
That's
that
the one? Yes, Your Honor.
So it looks like the quote that you've been looking at is on page
783, Your Honor.
Okay, what page of the report? Is it page 4?
It's page 783 that I'm looking in the bottom right corner.
Is that a Bates number from your exhibits?
No, Your Honor. No, it's the document itself. Do you see the
No,
cover
what I
page?
have are 17 pages. Is it longer than that?
My exhibit is not, Your Honor. It's a supplemental exhibit, so I don't have a number for it. It's toward the end of it's in the discussion portion of the report, Your Honor.
Right.
It's the second paragraph. Unfortunately, I guess medical folks don't paragraph very often.
Well,
It's the second
I've found that lawyers and judges don't do it very much either. So
Very good. It's under note. It's right after parenthetical 7.
says the 21% lower incidence in schools that require mask use among students was not statistically significant compared with schools where mask use was optional. Is that your language?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm reading from.
And is that at the bottom of the paragraph? If I'm looking at the right chord, it says findings in this report suggest universal and correct mask use is an important COVID-19 prevention strategy in schools as a part of a multi-component approach.
Yes. Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Is this the report that also in the summary says, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right report. It says on the first or second, maybe the first page, it says COVID-19 incidence was 37% lower in schools that required teachers and staff members to use masks and 39% lower in schools that improved ventilation. Is that the report we're looking at?
Yes, in this, it did not include the statistical significant, not statistically significant in the summary. Yes, that's correct, Your Honor. It did not.
All right, I was just curious. Okay, I've got that in case we need to look at it again. I'll be able to look at it in more detail. Thank you for helping me get to the right document, sir. Okay.
Yes, sir. We'll get the exhibit number for you too. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
That's okay. It's, the internet's a wonderful thing. You can get to these sorts of things pretty fast. So I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at the same report you were referring to. It looks like I am. So, okay, it's 3:53. We've been going about an hour. What's our next in our witness line up before we talk about a break? Damaris Allen?
That's correct, Your Honor. It's witness, a parent, Damaris Allen. She should be in the waiting room.
I do see her in the waiting room. Do y'all have a problem? Let's see. Another 10, 15 minute break for court reporter purposes, and then we can maybe make it all the way till 5.
Perfect.
Does that
Should be
work?
fine.
Okay, I'll see y'all in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Madam Court Reporter, do you know how to spell Botticelli?
No, I was gonna ask for that one.
It's
Okay.
Bhattatacharya.
And his first name?
It's spelled Jayanta.
Anta.
Yes, ma'am. Do you need any other spellings?
I think I got Oliva. and, I think
Oliva.
everybody- Yeah,
Mhm.
I think everybody else has been on the screen there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, who's next?
Hey, Your Honor, Attorney Erin Woolhams. I have one brief housekeeping matter. Opposing counsel was referring to supplemental exhibits. When were those sent? I think the consensus among my colleagues on our side is that we have not received any sort of supplemental exhibits.
Oh, well, let me say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll tell you what I have. That I was gonna.
I know the answer to it, Your Honor.
Okay, what is it, Mr.?
The answer, Mr. Bean,
Yes,
the answer
Mr.
was, it
Bean.
was just sent. It was sent 5 minutes ago, the supplementals.
Is this the COVID-19 article?
Exhibit 48 specifically as to you, Your Honor, but how many exhibits were sent supplemental?
Okay, well, hold on a minute. Here's what I have. I have exhibits 1 through 16. I have 17 through 42. And exhibit 14. I think we're agreed that all of those are going in. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor, I think so. Yep, there were 6 supplemental exhibits just served by the defendants 5 minutes ago.
6 supplementals. Have they been emailed to me? To my
Yes,
office?
Your Honor,
Okay.
to your judicial assistant.
Let me just check on that. Hold on.
I haven't seen it come through yet. Did she do it? Did they do a Dropbox?
Yeah, my paralegal is telling me that she did get rejection from some folks. I don't know whom. We'll find out. We can do it in a Dropbox as well.
All right, my office is checking that. So I guess we can talk about them tomorrow morning after plaintiff's counsel have had a chance to review those. And I want to review exhibit number 48 again. I'm not quite sure. I understand the questions concerning it, but I want to read the exhibit. I just have some questions on that, but I don't know enough about it to be able to ask any questions at this point. So
And I guess more importantly, with regards to the end of today is if defense can hold off on asking any questions about the supplemental exhibits, because I still don't see it come through, just so we have the opportunity to review those tonight.
what's the defense position?
It's a CDC report. They're relying their opinion on a CDC report. I don't know that the defendants had to remove it into evidence to ask the witness if they know about the CDC reports.
On the witness list or exhibit list.
What?
It's not
Even-
on the witness list or exhibit list. So, and quite frankly, we haven't even had the opportunity to
I think
review
they
it.
have a right to see your supplemental exhibit list before they call any more witnesses. So I'm not going to make them call a witness. I'm not going to make you not ask the questions, Mr. Bean, but I don't think it's right for them to call a witness unless they do at least had a chance to look at the report. I did not realize that the questions about the CDC report were not in an exhibit.
The
But
defendants
now I understand
understand.
why none of the doctors had seen it, as far as I know, and they were read just a line or two in it. So I think we need to let everybody have a chance to see that. And that goes the other way. If the plaintiff has got any supplementals, they've got to show it to you too. So I don't, plaintiff, how are we going on our witnesses?
Our witness for today, I believe if Your Honor is still on track for having an additional witness today, we were going to have Damaris Allen. She's a parent. I think asking her about CDC reports that have recently come out will be beyond the scope of her knowledge. So
how are we, let's assume we call Ms. Allen, how are we doing on the witnesses? This is a 3-day trial. Everybody told me 3 days was enough. So
I think we're only one behind. I just think Dr. Mangett would be tomorrow. So we're only losing one. And it helps us prep Dr. Mangett based on the supplemental exhibits to call her tomorrow. So we're not too far off.
Okay, well,
right.
It's like, how long does a fingernail grow? I don't know how far too far is. So
I've been staring at my fingernails this whole trial.
I think from our guesstimate, Your Honor, we're only about a half hour.
We don't have any email from anybody on supplemental exhibits.
And
there's a Melinda Higbee that emailed at 4:15.
Well, how did she email it to my GA?
Yes, Your Honor. Find out if Ms. Higbee, yeah. So Mr. Sheridan has it. Some folks, it bounced back due to this, maybe due to the size. I don't know, Your Honor.
Hold on, let me check.
I don't see it in mine yet, but
She's going to resend it with a Dropbox link.
I don't know
thank you.
If you're sending it to me with a Dropbox,
but she needs to,
might as well send it to me with a satellite address or something. We don't have it. I just went out there and checked. We've not gotten any emails after 4/12. Now, maybe the pipe's crowded, the internet pipe or whatever.
Your Honor, we got a bounce back from your judicial assistant. So we're sending it in a Dropbox, or we can break it up as well.
Let me ask her if she knows how to get stuff from a Dropbox, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, hold on.
She may need it broken down just in a couple emails.
Do you know how to get stuff?
That's what I was thinking.
Just to be safe.
what's your order for tomorrow, guys?
Yeah.
Do we know yet or not?
What time do you think you'll be
I
done?
don't think a Dropbox is a good idea for me.
We'll break it up, Your Honor.
Okay,
We'll
if
break
you
it
can
up.
break it up, but she's fixing to leave right now. I mean, I am devoting all my time on this, but I would like about 4 hours to sleep at night. So
Thank you, Your Honor.
if you can't get it to me in like a couple of minutes so she can, how many pages are we talking about, Mr. Bean?
We'll break up Exhibit 48. That's the one you want to see. So that's what we'll send you separate, and then we'll send you the remaining ones separate as well.
Okay.
Can you,
Maybe I just have I must not have the whole thing because my Exhibit 40, what I got off the internet is 13 pages. So it's longer than that.
No, Your Honor, not the report that I have. Can you ask Ms. Higbee to send to Ms. Barber Exhibit 48 specifically, so that the judge can have it before Mrs. Barber goes home?
I think, Mr. Bean, we're good on that. What are the other supplemental exhibits?
Hold on a second, Your Honor. I don't have it. I don't have the list.
Mr. Bean, does your office actually have a list of the supplemental?
I think he's going to get that right now. I think
Okay.
he's going to get that.
Perfect. And I apologize for coughing, Your Honor, when I'm unmuted. I
That's all
caught
right.
COVID from my preschooler.
I totally understand.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's fine.
Your Honor, my teammate, Mr. Burns, is going to pull up the supplemental so that he can identify the supplemental. I was Mr. Cross-examination today.
Okay, no problem. Why don't we just go ahead with, is it Damaris Allen, and get that witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
She's getting them now. She's printing them. Okay, so let me make sure y'all understand. If you divide 3 days by half, you get a day and a half. Y'all do understand that, right? Plaintiffs?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clearly understood.
Our goal was to be done a little bit before lunch tomorrow.
Excellent. Well, I'll be sure and skip breakfast then. So, okay, let's do Plaintiff Allen. I'm having Plaintiff Allen join the room. Ms. Allen, good afternoon. I'm Judge Cooper. And if you'll raise your right hand, I'll place you under oath. You swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, thank you. And you're Damaris, am I pronouncing that?
Damaris.
Damaris Allen. All right, everybody on the screen is Damaris Allen. And which plaintiff's counsel, Ms. Willems, you taking her or somebody?
I am.
Okay. All right, Ms. Allen, Ms. Willems, one of the plaintiff's attorney, will ask you questions. You may proceed.
Afternoon, Ms. Allen. May it please the court. Which city do you live in, Ms. Allen?
I live in Tampa.
Okay. Do you have any school-age children?
I do. I have one who's in college and one who is 14 and a junior in high school.
Okay. What is your 14-year-old's first name?
His first name is Emmett.
And what school does Emmett go to?
Emmett attends Plant High School in Tampa.
Is this a traditional? Is this a zone school? What type of school is it?
It's his traditional zone school.
And is it a good school?
It's a great school.
And do you live within the district that encompasses Plant High School?
Yes, I do.
Last year, where did Emmett attend school?
Emmett attended Plant High School, but he attended virtually. He participated in e-learning all last year.
Okay. What type of kid is Emmett?
I like to say Emmett's a unicorn. He's a 14-year-old junior. Opportunity to graduate this year if he wanted to. And we decided it probably wasn't the best idea for him to go to college at 15. And so he's decided to stay an extra year. He's completed tons of college courses already, many AP classes. He typically takes 4 to 5 a year. And he is a highly motivated, highly gifted student.
Last year, you said he was home all year. How did that go for him?
He did really well because he does really well with everything, but it was incredibly challenging. He took both AP Physics and AP Chemistry last year. And as you can imagine, those classes are a little more challenging to do over a computer screen. They really rely on discussion experiments like that can only take place in a classroom.
Do you feel that he got, the full benefit of that curriculum last year doing it online?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because I think there's a lot that he missed out on. He missed out on discussions and relationships that were built with peers and classes. He missed out on helping his peers, which a lot of students learn that way, especially Emmett. He missed out on conversations both before and after class with his teacher, which a lot of times happens. And then he just missed out on the classroom experience in general. And that was incredibly challenging. It's hard for him to stay engaged when watching on a screen. And it's a lot easier for him to stay engaged when he's at school.
And with regards to these classes, it's probably important for the court to have background. Your child that's in college, how old is he?
He's 17.
And is he likewise gifted like Emmett?
Yes, he is similar to Emmett, not quite the Emmett extreme, but he is very similar. So you said to context, Emmett took 8 classes at Plant, 10 hours at HCC, and about 5 hours on Florida Virtual School last year, all in 1 year.
Wow. Okay. With regards to school activities, was Emmett involved in any school activities last year?
So he traditionally is in band and marching band, which he stayed in band, but he did not participate in jazz band or in marching band last year because he was concerned about the fact that they were so close together. Even though they did a really great job of taking precautions, he just wasn't willing to take that level of exposure in the beginning of the year. As the year went on, he also joined crew, and he also rose with the Plant crew team.
And with regards to, so he didn't do the marching band last year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but he did crew.
Yes.
Were there any safety precautions in effect for the crew team?
Yes. So they were only allowed to row in boats with kids that were in their carpool and in their carpool. So in the beginning of the year, he could only row in singles. In addition to that, they wore masks, they social distance, and crew is all outside as well. So that also helps. It's not a contact sport. It's fairly distanced by nature.
And going to this year, is Emmett going remote? Is he going in person?
He is going in person. We do not have a remote option.
And if online was to be made an option for Emmett, such as, Hillsborough, I think virtual learning, are you aware of any platforms that Hillsborough County has for virtual learning?
Yes, so we do have Hillsborough Virtual and we have Florida Virtual. However, like I said, Emmett has completed almost all the classes that are offered for him in those platforms. And so it makes it really challenging because he has really specific needs, and he's already running out of classes at his traditional high school.
Are there any dress codes or school uniforms at Plant?
We do not have school uniforms, but we have a dress code that is in the entire county.
And what does that dress code entail?
So there's specific things about length of shorts. They can't have tank tops that are narrower than a certain amount. Usually it tends to be more focused on girls and boys. My son doesn't tend to wear short shorts or tank tops. So it doesn't really, I don't know it incredibly specifically because it doesn't tend to pertain to him.
Are there any sort of opt-outs to your knowledge?
No.
Are you involved with Plant or the school system?
Yes, I'm incredibly involved with both Plant and the school district.
Talking about Plant specifically, how are you involved with Plant High School?
So I'm the president of the parent teacher organization at Plant.
And in the past, have you, and how else are you involved with the schools?
So I do a lot of work with the school district as well. I was the president of our county parent organization. I've also worked on helping the district with initiatives like passing a tax referendum and just other things in the district as well.
Are you involved with any organizations with regards to safety in school?
I founded along with other people, have founded a group that advocates for a safe return based on CDC guidelines. We started last year and advocated for masks, and also this year as well.
Previously, have you served on any sort of state level with regards to the PTA?
Yes, I have also worked on their legislative committee. And have gone to Tallahassee and advocated for public education.
Do you volunteer at Plant High School itself?
I do.
Approximately how many hours per week do you spend volunteering in schools? Schools?
I would say that it depends on the week, but it can be anywhere from 15 to 70 hours a week. And that has been over the course of my kid's career.
Going back to Plant High School itself, was there an open house this year?
There was.
Were you there?
I was there as the parent organization president. It was a little different this year, but I was there.
And can you describe to the court what sort of safety precautions you saw everyone taking, if any?
Yes, there was very little. Occasionally, teachers were wearing masks. A handful of students were wearing masks, and a handful of parents were wearing masks. The one thing they did that was different to promote safety was to not allow parents to come on campus unless they were a parent of a freshman. But our school is overcrowded as it is, so there was no social distancing, really, no encouragement of wearing masks. It was completely optional.
With regards to drop off and pickups at school, do you do that for Emmett? You mentioned earlier he wasn't in a carpool previously.
Yes, so I do pick him up and drop him off at school every day.
What do you see with regards to safety precautions during the pickups and drop offs at Plant High School?
So unlike elementary schools, drop off and pick off isn't as organized when it comes to so it's basically students race the gate and leave. So there's a space between because we have a single entry system where they exit the building and then they exit the gate afterwards. So usually kids come out of the building, if they're wearing a mask at all, they take it off immediately. So they're pretty crowded in that gate area. And then they come out on a small side street that we have in front of our school, and we pick them up.
Have you had the opportunity to actually be on campus during school hours this year?
Yes, we have an exception that presidents of organizations are allowed to be on campus as a volunteer.
And what, if you can, describe the level of masks or social distancing that you see during school being in session prior to August 18th?
I would say there's very, very limited masking, that the vast majority of students were not wearing masks.
And what about social distancing?
Like I said, social distancing, obviously I can't walk completely around campus, but social distancing is not really a possibility in a school that's already over capacity.
Recently, last week, did Hillsborough County School Board do anything to mitigate the spread of COVID, to your knowledge?
Yes, so our Hillsborough County School Board voted to institute a mask mandate with only a medical opt-out.
And have you been to school since that was enacted?
I have been to school outside of campus, but not inside of campus since that happened.
Is Emmett eligible to be vaccinated?
Emmett is eligible.
And is he vaccinated?
He is vaccinated.
So even with his vaccinated, do you have any concerns regarding if there were no mask mandate?
Yes. So my school I did a public records request. We had 1,206 students opt out of our mask mandate, which means that just under half of our school was not going to be wearing masks, which is a real concern because we don't know how our kids are going to react to COVID until they actually get it. Also, Emmett has a history of respiratory problems. He had pneumonia several times when he was really young. And because of that, I'm very concerned about how he will react if he does contract. And there are breakthrough cases for students who are vaccinated.
With regards to activities this year, is Emmett involved in any activities on campus this year?
Yes, so he has decided to go ahead and do band this year, only because he missed it terribly. He is still very concerned about the safety of the event.
And are there any safety precautions being done for the marching band this year?
Yes, so our marching band director does a great job. They have bell covers, they have specialized masks that they use. Thankfully, our band room is very large, so you have the ability to social distance. And then obviously when they're out marching on the field, they're socially distanced as well.
Is he likewise doing crew this year?
Yes, he is.
And are there any safety precautions with regards to that as well?
Yes, there are safety precautions with that as well. They still have to have masks with them at all times. They have masks available for them. They have to be masked if they're inside and if they're close to each other.
Do your children and you wear a mask outside of your home?
Always.
How long have they been doing that?
Since right after lockdown. I don't know if that's what it's called. Right after lockdown, when we were allowed to go out again, that's when they started wearing masks. For a very long time, they didn't go out with me at all. They pretty much stayed at home, which you can imagine is torture for teenagers. But once they started going out, they started wearing masks again.
With regards to your kids, do they have any preference over one mask versus another?
Emmett will take anything that's clean because he's a little absent-minded. And Aiden has some sensory issues. He's that kid that would only wear a certain kind of pair of socks when he was growing up. So he has a mask that he prefers over others.
Did you find that mask instantly, or because of his sensory issues, did you have a lot of try-ons? How many times did it take you to find the right mask for his sensory issues?
Sure. Probably about 2 or 3 times. It's fairly easy now that they're older because they can communicate pretty well. So he could tell me what he liked and what he didn't like about the mask. And then I could find one that catered to his needs.
Have either one of your children developed any sort of health issues as a result of the masks?
No.
Have either one of your children developed any sort of mental issues as a result of wearing masks?
No.
Does Emmett wear a mask in school?
Yes.
And has the wearing of masks in school this year had any sort of negative effect on Emmett or his education this year?
Absolutely not.
And we spoke earlier about you wearing a mask. Why do you wear a mask?
Because I want to protect my kids. I want to protect the people around me. I want to and stop the spread of the virus in my community.
When you get home, do you or your children take the mask off?
Yes, we usually take them off, and I have to go and find them and wash them because they're kids.
Right. Do you engage with your kids when you get home?
Always, yeah. Usually.
They are teenagers. So
yes.
What sort of activities do you do with them?
So we eat a lot of family dinners together. We have lots of conversations as I'm playing taxi driver to them, driving them all around. Sometimes we watch shows together. Sometimes we play games together, things like that.
Have you or your family traveled since March of 2020?
We have, and it was we have.
Okay. When did you travel?
We have traveled in times that the spread has dipped, and I could not tell you without looking at a calendar exactly when that was. And we traveled to a place that didn't have high spread numbers either.
And since, let's say, March of 2021, or February of 2021, have you traveled personally?
I'm sorry?
Have you traveled personally?
Yes.
Okay. And where have you gone?
I had to go to DC for a work thing.
Okay. At any point in time, have you gone to Tallahassee?
Oh, yes. Yes.
When?
Times. So during session, during last session, starting, I believe in February and then ending in March, I went up 4 times to Tallahassee. And then Emmett went up with me 2 times to Tallahassee.
Now you say session, but for everyone's edification, what do you mean by session?
We went up for legislative session. I went up first for pre-committee week. And then after that, the rest of the travels were during committee weeks.
And when you went to the Senate, what sort of safety protocols were in effect for COVID, or were there any?
So when we went to the Senate, the committee meetings were held remotely. So if you went to go and speak in there, meeting, you had to go to the Civic Center. You had to sign in and have your temperature taken. You were asked 3 questions. Basically, have you had any symptoms, a fever, and I can't remember the third one, before you were let in. Once you answered that you hadn't had any of those or have been in contact with anyone with COVID. And once that happened, you were allowed to go into the Civic Center. The seating was socially distanced, and you had to wipe down the microphone and the podium to disinfect it in between every time you spoke.
Did you have to wear anything?
Oh, and we had to wear masks.
What about, did you go to the House session? Did you go to both?
Yes, so we went to the House session as well. The House was in person. You could only go in if you spoke. You had to wear a mask. You had to answer the same 3 questions, and you had to have your temperature taken. You could visit members of the House, but you could not individually in their offices, but you could not visit members of the Senate at all.
Was there any requirement for face coverings or masks in the House?
Yes, you had to wear masks.
Do you know anyone who's had COVID?
I do. I have a friend who had COVID, and I know a friend whose child had COVID.
And are you familiar with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's recommendations and precautions for children's attendance in school?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations for children's attendance at school?
Yes.
And what's your understanding of those? Do you follow those recommendations?
I do. I do.
And what is your understanding of those recommendations that you follow?
My understanding is that everyone should be wearing a mask indoors, regardless of vaccination status.
If Hillsborough County no longer had their mask mandate, what would be the harm to you and your family, if any?
I think that it would automatically put my kid at a higher risk for being quarantined or having COVID, which is incredibly concerning. And it would also potentially bring COVID home to my house, which would put me at risk, my other son at risk, and then also my husband at risk. In addition, it would also keep us from seeing their grandmother who has underlying health issues because they would potentially put her at risk as well.
What about Emmett's learning if he was to be quarantined? How would he learn?
We don't really have a plan for that. He would sit at home and complete assignments on his own, and potentially be able to reach out with tutors if he needed help and if he needed help only.
To your knowledge, does Hillsborough County have an online option for children that are quarantined?
It does not.
So how do you get assignments for your child?
So we traditionally use Canvas, and that's how their students get all of their assignments. And so basically teachers are instructed to upload all of their assignments on Canvas, and students are required to complete them on their own and submit them on their own.
Why did you bring this lawsuit?
Because I'm very concerned about the health and safety of my kids and the kids in my community.
And why should local school boards be able to choose whether or not to mask?
Because local boards have the ability to make the decision based on the needs of a local community. You saw this best last year when we had a lot of communities with high percentage of positivity rates, and then others that didn't have as high positivity rating. So we really want to be able to make that decision based on the need of our community instead of instituting a mandate all over the state, whether for or against mask.
Why is leaving the choice to mask up to individual parents a problem, or is it a problem?
It definitely is a problem. I think when you're looking at parental choice, it's really a false narrative, because when you're putting, especially in this situation, because at some point you're ultimately choosing that one parent's choice matters over another. In this case, if it continues the way it's going, my choice to protect my child will not matter, because the way masks work is that my mask prevents you from getting what I have. And so it really means that it's necessary that all of us are masked. And so by saying that I can't make the decision, by saying that we can't have a mask mandate, you're saying that my choice doesn't matter.
Do you believe that masking itself then is a individual parent issue?
No, it's absolutely a public health issue.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor. I tender the witness to the
Child.
I do.
Thank you. What instrument does your son play in the marching band at Plant City?
He's at Plant High School, not Plant City, but it's trumpet.
He plays the trumpet, and he obviously plays the trumpet without the mask, correct?
They actually have a special mask that is created with an opening that surrounds the trumpet. I believe it was created by the University of Indiana.
So he plays it with the mask?
Correct.
Okay. And then the mask seals around the trumpet?
Correct.
Okay. You said you testified at the legislative session. Were you aware that ended on April 30th, 2021?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen, thank you for your service in the Parent Teacher Association and what you do for your community. No further questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bean. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Allen, thank you for waiting for us. And I'm looking for you. Oh, there you are. Thank you for waiting for us. And I appreciate you coming today. And you're released from the obligation of being a witness. So you're free to observe the rest of the day on YouTube or the other day or days we may have left on YouTube.
Thank you.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you, Ms. Allen.
Bye-bye. So we're about 4:53. So I suspect we should not call any further witnesses. Can we agree on that?
I believe so, Your Honor. Yes, that's
It's
fine.
always good to try to agree on something at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So,
It's fine with the defendants. Charles, you were on mute.
okay, Mr. Gallagher, he has the look of agreement on his face, although I couldn't hear him, but.
We agree with recessing today, yes.
All right, so starting tomorrow at 9, does that work? Or 9, what was I saying, 9:30? Is 9:30 good enough to give you a little time to get prepared when you get into the office? So we can start again 9:30. Hope we're on track. And absent anything else, I'll see you. I guess I should say this because I do in every case. Don't know whether these words will fall on deaf ears or not, but in every case, I encourage the parties that there's never any time that's too late to resolve your differences without leaving it up to the judge. There's no negative in my mind if the parties resolve at any point their differences. There's no time that's too late for you to do that. If you need any of my time to assist you by giving you more time to talk, I'll be glad to do that. With that, I understand issues like this sometimes are difficult to resolve by agreement, but if it can be resolved by agreement, I always encourage that in any dispute of any sort. So with that being said, now I've said this in this case, not sure if I've said this before, but I try to say this in every case. If you talk to the lawyers around town, they will tell you I say it every time we take a break. So I won't lay it on you more than once, but I will do it at least once. So thank you very much. Lawyers have all are like excellent Zoom experts and students of Zoom. So I appreciate you helping me getting everything done smoothly. And I'll see you. We'll adjourn now. I want to thank the court reporter for her service. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Have a good one.
Okay, bye-bye.